this and more, we are now joined by Bain Co senior partner Harsh Vardhan. Thanks a lot, Harsh, for joining in. I mean, you've heard the story, you've heard the possibilities. What are your views on both sides? Because on the one side, it will be obviously good that more capital comes into the country, foreign capital comes into the country with technology and management expertise, etc. But on the other, it opens, the country to another sort of risk as well.
Yeah, I think the risks are overstated. I think this is a very welcome move. We should have done this before. Our banking system is very large now, and it requires a lot of capital continuously to be infused. We can't be entirely domestically capitalized. I think we are way past that size now. We have 17 trillion or so rupees of capital in the banking system. Even at 15% growth, you need 2.5 trillion rupees of capital every year. Now, banks will not generate that much internally post-dividend. So I think we need to open ourselves for foreign capital. And remember, it's not just, we already allow FIIs up to 74, as Latha said. However, we need more permanent capital. We need capital that is strategic, which will be involved in the management and improving governance of the bank. As you said, they can bring expertise and so on. So I think this is a very welcome move. I mean, historically, last 20 years, we have done that only when we had to rescue troubled banks. Yeah. I think that experience is rich. Regulator now understands how to deal with foreign ownership. So I think we need to open our gates. I think this is a very welcome move.
Yeah, I should have added in the exceptions that LVB was also handed over.
I was about to say that, that was also
TVS. Yeah, but that since it is not a listed stock, we didn't get into it. But that's an important, giving over to a foreign bank. But Mr. Harshvardhan, what is your sense about foreign interest itself if this 26% voting cap remains?
Yeah, I mean, I think progressively we might have to relax that, and including that 24% voting restriction, because how does a strategic owner improve governance if it remains a minority? I think that's a question we'll have to confront, but we have to go in steps. So I think initially people might still be interested. Look, Indian banking is one of the few jurisdictions in the world which grows at double digit and generates a 12-13% ROE as a system. There are not too many banking systems like that. So I think there will still be interest if you look at any of the global banks, which markets remain for them where they can see this kind of growth. So I think even with the 20% restrictions, there would be a fair bit of interest. However, I also feel over a period of time, we'll have to re-examine some of these other restrictions like voting rights and so on.
Okay. What other restrictions do you think Reserve Bank may put? I mean, they have that fit and proper qualification, even when you go beyond 5%.
Yes.
Are they likely to do something else? I mean, would they want to ring fence the capital and not allow it to go out? The point that Mangalam also asked you.
Yeah, I mean,
would you expect that kind of rules?
That is the whole point of moving from branches to wholly owned subsidiaries. Because in branches, the capital is fungible. It can come in and go out easily. Whereas in a wholly owned subsidiary. So therefore, if this is allowed in an Indian incorporated entity, the capital becomes ring-fenced automatically. I think what they would, obviously this will be not automatic route. So RBI will diligence the entities that are applying for this level of stake. And I think along with that, they will, I mean, in terms of board seats and all, they will put some restrictions. But that will be certainly better than what we have today, right? I strongly believe, yeah.
Okay, a final question. Would you expect it sooner rather than later, since the government is pretty much in a hurry to sell its stake in IDBI?
I mean, IDBI has taken, 3 years now? And I think it's the time that they... And remember, there is also a pipeline of future PSU privatization. Capitalizing these private public sector banks is a huge fiscal drag on the government. So at some point of time in the future, next 10 years, I would imagine we'll see some more privatization. And we need to be ready for that, because the only entities who could do that, participate in that, is other banks, foreign banks.
Okay.
Just out of curiosity, from a stock market standpoint, how should one look at this? I mean, is it foreign capital coming into existing banks, and as a result of which maybe there could be better valuations available for them, or do you look at it as competition for banks which are not listed, and as a result of which maybe derating?
And just to add to Mangalam's question, which also was occurring to me, if this rule gets passed, let us assume that in a month, Reserve Bank actually announces that we are removing that 15% limit. Do you think PSU banks will jump in the hope that, IDBI has shown the way and others will follow?
Yeah. Look, I'm not a stock market expert. You guys know that better. Generally, I believe this is a positive news, significantly positive news. For the Indian banking, because you are opening gates for a significant amount of capital come in and strategic capital to come in, which is always a good news.
Okay.
All right.
We'll leave it at that, Mr. Harshvardhan. Pleasure having you with us, and thank you very much for the perspective and for the understanding that you have brought to the subject. So now it's over to the Reserve Bank. Let's see what they say. Surely that question will be raised in the press conference tomorrow.
Take that point. But Latha, just from a narrative standpoint, if this was to get passed, and you said that maybe, PSU banks will jump, perhaps, if at all this happens, on hopes of any sort of this thing coming into PSU banks, etc. From optics perspective, from a culture perspective, from a narrative perspective, how would the actual thing happen on ground? Because from a stock market standpoint, it's very easy to say, that this bank has been taken over by some foreign company, etc. So it should be valuation. But from a
very valid question. It's not happen. It cannot happen tomorrow or next year, because the Banking Regulation Act has very many restrictions on public sector banks, or they're almost treated like government companies.
Exactly.
The CVC looks into their books. So the first rule that will have to be brought on is that government stake in public sector banks has to come down below 50%.
Right.
Even that is not on the cards. Banking Regulation Act and the Takeover of Banking Companies Act, I think it's called Banking Companies Act, requires the government to have over 51% in banks. First, that has to be removed. Will the government be politically open to that? At the moment, they have not shown the inclination. So it's a very long way.
Okay, all right, Latha. Thanks a lot for joining in and taking us through that discussion. For the time being, we slip into a short break. You come back. We continue to focus on markets and on a couple of stocks that are moving around. Don't go anywhere.